When Kevin's name was announced to be prayed for, and why, she got up and left church. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I didn't know that she had done that.
My name is Kevin Hines. I jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. I believed that I had to die, but I lived. Now I help people be here tomorrow.
So I was in CYO and involved in some national work, helping to develop a program that was actually started in this archdiocese called the Search for Christian Maturity. It's also when I first got involved in doing work against cults that were here in the Bay Area. I spent a lot of time doing that. Then after CYO, I became a pastor for the first time in the Outer Richmond district of San Francisco, St. Thomas Apostle Parish. I was there for 9 years and then invited to come here to become pastor of St. Cecilia's, and that was 22 years ago, if you can believe it. And that's where I am now. I'm 73, I have 2 more years, and then I'll retire.
What really led you to your calling of being a clergyman?
It's very interesting on how I started to think about it. I had been accepted in my senior year of high school at Santa Clara University. And I went to lunch in the cafeteria with other seniors from Sarah, and these 4 people started to talk about the fact they were going down to the seminary. And I remember saying to them, "You know that you're going to be priests?" And they said, "No, you go down to find out." No one had ever told me that before. So I started to think about it. I went to my counselor, a priest. He said, "Go to Santa Clara." I went to my pastor, Monsignor Harriman. He said, "Go to the seminary." And so then I went down to the seminary. And you know, it's 8 years of discernment, 8 years where you have a lot of conferences, 8 years where you have a lot of quiet time. So it's not anything you rush into. You really try to listen, to what the Lord is asking you to be. I think the best vocation poster I ever saw was, "Listen to the voice that only you can hear." And I think that's why I'm a priest today.
This film is called The Ripple Effect. It is about the devastating effect that is caused by suicide. You've known Kevin Hines for the better part of 2 decades. Do you remember what Kevin was like when you first met him?
Yes.
Or what your experience was when you first met him?
Yes. Well, I think when I met Kevin Hines, I think the first thing that I noticed about him was, I think he was a very intense person. His eyes kind of gave him away. If he was in a room and you were giving a talk, you knew he was there. That was my first impression of Kevin, and an intense person. Second was the fact that he never asked a lot of questions in the large group, but when the break came and I went into him, he would have questions to ask me, and they were always thoughtful questions. I even didn't have answers some of the times.
Do you remember what any of those questions might have been?
Well, it had to do with confirmation was the really important sacrament. And I think it really had to do with wanting to know, what are some very clear signs that I'm taking the proper step in my journey of faith, and that's why I like the questions, because there's not an easy answer for that, but it's an answer of kind of where you take a leap of faith, but also at the same time you look at your life and you look how you're living your life.
Having known Kevin for all that time, when you heard that he attempted to take his own life, how did that immediately affect you?
Well, his dad called me, and I was shocked, and then I was grateful that he was alive. So it was a real mixed set of emotions, being shocked and being very thankful that he was alive. And his dad really talked to me about the steps that would be taken, and there was hope that he would recover.
How did his attempt affect those around you?
Well, I remember people, when they heard about it, coming to me and saying, "Did you hear about Kevin?" And I said, "Yes," and they'd all say, I never thought that he would ever do anything like that. He just didn't seem to be that type of person. He always seemed to give 100%, whether it was wrestling or whatever it was, and a sport he would be involved in. And so they just did not see that would lead someone to questioning whether they should continue on earth.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding you may have said a few masses for Kevin and his family, praying for him to heal, for him to survive. Can you tell us about that, how that came to be?
Well, what happened was I had a class mass shortly after that. And so what I do is each grade of the school, once during the year, has a mass with me. But we prepare the mass one day, and then we have the mass in a small, intimate gathering of Our Lady's Chapel. So it's not your typical mass in a large church. It's more of a community gathering. And I can remember in the preparation, really asking the people, I said, we really believe in the power of healing. We really believe that God is with people. And we also believe that as mysterious as it is, there's a lesson to be learned. What can we learn from this? So it was so wonderful that I had that opportunity with one particular class, but also I was teaching 8th grade at the time. And so it was interesting because I was teaching about moral development, making moral decisions, and so I was able to really talk about that, talking about how actions affect who we are.
You may not know this, but one mass that was said here at St. Cecilia's, where the sermon was to pray for Kevin to heal and his family. His grandmother was attending. She was of the old school opinion that suicide or an attempt was a black mark on the Catholic family. When Kevin's name was announced to be prayed for, and why, she got up and left church. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I didn't know that she had done that, but I also know that people react differently to something like that, and you're talking about a grandson, and so it hits very deep, very profound, and sometimes our reactions are unpredictable.
What do you think of the old Catholic ideal that suicide is a sin or was a sin?
Well, I think it came from an era where everything had to be categorized. We had to put labels on everything, and if something was good, we had to know very specifically what that was that made it good. And if something was a sin, then we had to, talk about it very clearly. The church, really in her wisdom, has really understood that suicide is not a sin. A person does not go to hell if they die. That when a person reaches that point where they take that step, that they really are not in full control of themselves.
Is it true that the Pope has recently abolished that idea that suicide or mental illness is sinful, and now the church has come out? Has the church come out and changed that thought process from the top down?
I think the thought process has been changed for a while. I think that because Pope Francis is so attuned with the people, that when he says it, it kind of gets headlines. But I really believe in recent years that most people would, really understand in regards to sin.
You are Kevin's father confessor. It's a big responsibility to be anyone's, and let alone all the people that you are there for in that regard. What are your thoughts on the work in mental health that Kevin is doing that he feels is part of his responsibility?
Well, I think that Kevin, above all, is a compassionate person. More than anything else, a compassionate person. Comes from two Latin words, compasio, to suffer with. You have suffered, and you have that ability to communicate to others hope because you have suffered so deeply. And you do it in such a genuine way. And I can say that because I was in that classroom when Kevin Hines gave his first talk, and I saw the reaction of the 8th graders gathered around, and since that time a number of other times also.
You once you said to Kevin after a confession that he was like a wounded healer. What did you mean by that Kevin was a wounded healer?
Well, I think that people want to talk with someone that they can identify with, someone that they think knows somewhat what I'm going through. And so when you talk about suicide, you talk about trying to have a positive self-image, you talk about, really believing in yourself and all that, they look to you as someone who has made that happen, someone who's gone down that road. And so that's what I talk about Wounded Healer, because you've been healed. And other people are healed because of the words that you say and the actions you perform.
If this video helped you, inspired you, or you think it could help someone you know, please take a second to share this video. Your share could save a life. And whatever you do, fight to be well. Be here tomorrow.